Welcome back to episode 2
of Echoes of
of
Home by Abode. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Erin.
We are excited to be here today. Yesterday we filmed our initial episode, giving a little bit of an intro of us and
Yes, our origin story, who we are, how we met.
touching into, the beginning of our spiritual journeys and what that looked like for us, which has been really fun to reflect on in the last 24 hours. Yeah. And today we're going to kind of talk about those tools that changed us, the tools that were sort of the seeds of the evolution of each of us individually, and what really works for us now and what doesn't. And that can look like literal tools or experiences that we've had that have been pivotal moments, maybe where we had to gather more tools.
Yeah, like lessons.
Yeah.
That we've had along the way that we kind of take with us or build upon, which it's an interesting concept as well. I'm 41. Kelly is a little bit younger than me, but to do kind of this exercise of looking back and seeing, what are the tools that have changed me and have shaped me. I think that there's a part of me that's like, oh man, I'm not as far as I want to be.
Yeah.
And so I think that's that's actually a good place to start, because I know you and I relate a lot on the realm of perfectionism.
Yeah. I was just talking to my therapist about it now. It's a 10-year joke that we call Kundalini now. Anytime she sees me doing that thing where my expectation of myself is basically perfectionism in my healing journey and in my spiritual journey, like I was talking about yesterday, like I put Nirvana on my body and thought like, fuck yeah, I'll be Siddhartha. Like that's like, so let's be realistic, and how do we have grace with ourselves?
Absolutely. So I think that there's been a couple of tools that have helped me around that. I mean, first and foremost is just the awareness around my perfectionism, and also digging a little bit deeper as far as like what my ego is really like. How am I trying to protect, or how is my ego benefiting from this idea of perfectionism?
Totally.
I think perfectionism shows up a lot in our expectations. And I think that's totally, like I heard the quote, and I always use this, our expectations are just future resentments.
Yeah.
Because when we get caught up in the expectations of ourselves or the expectations of others, we're typically disappointed. And I think it weaves really closely into like stress levels and anxiety, because another thing that I once heard that I always use is like, stress is just the space between what you expected to happen and what's actually happening, and how you're choosing to show up in that space.
Yeah. And I've also heard something similar that's along the lines of anxiety or stress is just the lack of doing the thing.
Yeah.
A space in between producing, doing the thing, checking the thing off the list, making the decision, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was something really interesting to look at in my journey, is not only the awareness of anxiety, and perfectionism, but in our society where we're majorly focused on producing
and doing.
Perfectionism and anxiety, these types of traits are what can be very helpful in our work lives, our school lives.
Yeah.
And so sort of detaching from that, or learning how to compartmentalize that, is quite the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, having the awareness of perfectionism is just really key, and like identifying with it. And then to your point, I think a huge shift for me, and a tool that I use, is like honoring that this is this perfectionism or this thing that causes me a lot of stress or high expectations or to be disappointed regularly or harsh on myself or others is actually also a great benefit to me. And it is, in some ways, a survival skill.
Yeah.
So I didn't one day wake up and say, in order for me to be happy, I have to be perfect. I learned this by watching others, by, through my own life experiences. And so at some point in recent years, it's like when I'm doing, when I'm in a place of like, I recognize these flaws or these defects and I see how they hurt me and I see how they disappoint, just like my potential of being, how can I fix this? How can I change this? It's like, hold on, look over here, like look in your professional life. And I think this often happens. Like it's such a juxtaposition for you to be on a spiritual journey and excelling in your career. Because often the characteristics of your personality that are causing the most pain and stress and suffering in your personal life or your personal relationships are what keep you excelling in your career.
100%.
And I think this goes into like being aware of black and white thinking, good versus bad, and acknowledging like we're all in the gray. And like the biggest thing is saying, okay, I realize that I do this and it makes my life hard, but I love myself anyway for it. And I love it. I love up this part of myself is a new thing instead of like shaming it away, being like, oh, I'm so this, I hate this about myself. Because that's what I think I did for so many years. When I got into hardship, it was like, specifically me with relationships. It's like, oh God, I'm so this way, I'm so that. They, this is why they don't want to be with me, or this is why it's so challenging because I'm this way. It's like, actually, that really serves you, and you've learned that skill.
Yeah, the self-love practice in it.
Yeah. And like you survived a lot because of that skill. So like, it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm not so familiar with parts work, but for me, my idea of it is like, the shadow side of me deserves just as much love.
Well, that's where you go, okay, that little Aaron and little Kelly learned to survive in their childhood this way based off of the environment that they were in. This is how they learned to strive. This is how they got praise. This is how they cultivated safety. And I can have compassion for that part of myself, that little girl who's still within, and say, you know what? I know that you learned this and this was really serving for you when you were little, but right now adult Kelly is going to take over. You do you, however old she is, like go outside and play. For me, she's like cuddled up in a bed, like in her cocoon, and I'm like, look, you stay there, I've got you. We're safe. You don't have to engage in these ways because those aren't necessary right now for this scenario.
Absolutely.
And it's like a parent-child relationship.
It is.
Like, I, the parent, have got this. You don't need to strive right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So that makes me think of a couple more tools. One is, and I know we have touched on this or will touch on this on other podcasts, but I think in recent years, understanding and kind of researching the masculine and feminine energies has been super helpful for me. And then I'll just say it and we can like delve into it or not, but also cycle syncing and being aware of where I am in my cycle. I probably started tracking my cycle. I was probably like 30, I had a core at 32. I was probably like 35 when I finally started. Like I got an app, pay for the app, like I'm doing this. And that's been a pretty constant in my life. And I'm not as like, you're a lot more attuned and pretty like detailed. Like you'll ask me sometimes, oh, well, what day are you on? I'm like, I don't know what day I'm on, but I always know what phase of my cycle I'm in.
Yeah.
And I probably only check it like a couple of times a month, just because I feel like for so long I would beat myself up around not having energy, or why am I so hungry? I'm not eating properly.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. I'm not feeling productive, like whatever I'm missing, or the like shoulding on myself for.
Yeah.
You should feel this way. You should do this. Why am I not? It's like, it's so affirming.
Yeah.
And gives me so much understanding and compassion for myself. And it's like, I tell my nieces about it, and any woman who I am talking to that doesn't know their cycle or track it, I'm like, you should totally do this.
It's so crazy that we as women in 2025, like, how the fuck is this not being taught in school?
I know, still to this day. Even like basic female anatomy and like the intricacies of our anatomy.
And our period, and what happens to our hormones, and how we feel in these different 4 phases of our cycle, and what's normal. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. You feel this way. And I think, like, you know, especially as a young woman growing up, like, with other teenagers and teenage boys, like, there's so much shame around it, and putting women down, and this conversation about them being crazy and unhinged, whatever. And God, I mean, I've been off of synthetic birth control for 15 years. 2010. And I mean, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm still learning, and I'm still accepting, because it is such a wild ride every month.
Yeah.
Of where I'm at. Like right now, I'm on day 3. I'm starting to feel my energy come back. I just came from yoga. Like, oh, like I'm feeling more strong. And I had all these feelings last week. You know, reflecting on my life as a whole, and like identity crisis, and like all of this swirling around. And now I'm like, you know, that's cool.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like,
it just helps give
like
you
clockwork.
grace. Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps give you yourself some grace. And I think, you know, living in a patriarchal society, no one else is offering that to us. So we really have to offer it to ourselves.
Yeah. We'll have to do a whole other episode on perimenopause, since it's like a hot topic right now.
Yes.
So I'm going to try really hard not to dive deep into
that.
And
Shannon, I talked to yesterday for my consultation. She was like, oh, you guys should interview me. So
I would
something
love
to consider.
Oh my God. It's such a hot topic. It's all over my algorithm right now.
But I think going back to the masculine and feminine, so like this, like the cycle syncing was probably, honestly, maybe even like my first step towards really embracing my femininity and like attuning to it, because I experienced burnout as a first-time mom, and I mentioned on the first episode, like, struggled with losing the baby weight, was juggling a lot, and came to realize and understand that I was super in my masculine because I was with a very feminine male who that's where our balance was for the relationship. But I was out of balance within myself. And I think I always felt like very comfortable with masculine energy. Always. Like
Me too.
I've always had male friends. There was something even about me, like I just had friends being around women who I just felt like were more feminine than me for some reason. Whether it was like looks or whatever.
It's like there's a softness, or like,
this
like
a gentleness,
dainty, gentle, soft, in these ways. And I think that's one of the things that we have in common is we sort of have this.
I'm like not that way at all.
I was like a tomboy and like playing with all the boys and like kicking them in the balls and stuff on the playground.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
And also because we have older brothers.
Yes.
That's a major difference.
Yeah, for sure. So I was very comfortable with that. And then also, as we spoke about, like I was very career driven I really wanted to have a career, and I wanted to know exactly what I was going to school for. I made sure I did as many internships as I possibly could to get real world experience. And I was just going to like jump in there head first.
It's like a masculine striving and producing and providing for yourself.
Yeah. And then I also I require physical activity, like moving my body, which I don't think is necessarily masculine or feminine. But I think why I bring that up is there were just things that were kind of stacking on the masculine side that are much more about doing. And this awareness of the feminine and kind of making space to soften and invite in the feminine and understanding my cycle was the initial like step into that world, because it was like, when I'm in my feminine, I have permission to just be.
Yeah.
And like kind of holding that space for myself, because I don't think many people have ever held that space for me to just be.
Me, I feel the same.
Yeah.
I'm still working on that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, reflecting on these tools and life experiences, I'm like, oh, yeah, I can easily get out of whack.
I feel like one of the biggest turning points for me, because I kind of think about this in the realm of turning points in my life. And I have, like, major experiences, but where I kind of had, like we talked about yesterday, a choice to go one direction or the other. And with that, I had to have some sort of awakening of awareness within myself. And one of them was I remember where I was on the call with my therapist in the Ingles parking lot in Weaverville. And we identified this rule, like it was the awareness of the fact that I had a developed this rule within myself at an early age that I needed my anxiety that I had, that I thought that, you know, I witnessed my father, I watched him be a worrywart, like somebody who had a plan B for everything, foresaw any potential ways that something could go down with business, and had, you know, already had his mind wrapped around things. And with that can come like a anxiety type energy. And so I early on identified that I needed that part of myself to be able to be successful in life and everything, really, in relationships, in business, in my, you know, my intimate relationship, and having that come to my awareness, and then starting to shift out of that and deprogram from that has been a long journey. But I think that initial awareness that this was a tool that I thought that I needed in myself to survive
it created safety. It's like, keep your head on a swivel. Always be looking out.
Hypervigilance.
If you're always thinking 5 steps ahead or thinking of everything, no one can come in and hurt you.
Yeah.
I feel like I developed the same thing, and it looked like, so I come from a family of warriors, specifically like on the maternal side. And I remember being like, I'm going to think of every possible negative outcome.
Yeah.
And allowing my mind to go there will prevent me, because I'll be aware, like I'll never let anything bad happen. And this was like around the age when I like first got my license, and I was like smoking tons of weed and drinking. And I remember I was like, I'm going to get as high as possible the first day I get my license so I can always drive stoned. So this is kind of like a stoner thought that I had. But it's really interesting, because it was like, I remember just, you know, I'm inundated with these worries and like what ifs from my mom. And I would kind of be like, oh, I've already thought of that. Like, I've got this. But it's interesting, because it's like how, you know, I'm really totally fascinated with this complex relationship with fear, because there's fear that's like, you need to think about these things to protect yourself, and it's actually serving you. And then there's the fear that's like, it has no place. And I mean, I guess I really relate, and that's kind of like a whole other topic, but it definitely draws back to like, yeah, I developed this way of being because I was taught or I learned that it's what keeps me safe.
It's interesting that everything that we're pointing out at this so far is aware, like different things that we became aware of.
Yeah.
It's these different awarenesses. It's like my nervous system awareness. So, you know, if like something happens socially at an event and I'm worried about this, did I say this or should I have said that? Whatever that is, I'm able to like rationalize myself out of it. And it's really like, I guess it's talking to the inner child from the adult space, and also just having, where am I at in my cycle? How much sleep have I had?
Yeah.
You know, like, have I consumed enough food? How many cups of coffee did I have today?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on in my physical body? When's the last time I moved my body?
Yeah.
Is there just a bunch of energy that I need to wring out?
Yeah.
How much time for myself have I taken to like reflect? Have I been in nature? Have I taken my vitamin D? Like, do I just need to be warm? Like, what are all the things that my body needs to like downregulate?
Because it's not a natural state for us to be in.
Yeah. And what is it? Do I need to call you and just like process something real quick?
Yeah.
And how much better will I feel if I just move that out and through?
Absolutely.
I think that was a thing that I picked up from our friend Susanna doing psilocybin ceremonies with her. Just the concept of, and the awareness of our capacity as individuals to move energy through our bodies really quickly.
Yeah.
If we're aware, like, it's almost like the untethered soul, the idea that like we are not that feeling.
Yep.
We're separate from that emotion.
Yeah.
Like we can watch it, we can experience it, and we can also move it out and through.
Yes.
And here are the different ways that we can do that.
Yeah.
A physical practice, talking, processing with a friend, whatever.
Emotions are just energy in motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I had it on the top of my head and I could quote it, but there was something that Mel Robbins said in the Let Them Theory book I read recently, which I love. She did a lot of studies around emotions, and I'll paraphrase it, but she was talking to all the doctors in the field who study emotion on a scientific level.
Yeah.
And one of the studies was around what actually happens to your body when an emotion happens. And there's a certain amount of seconds where the emotion rises and then it basically pops like on a cellular level. And if you wait, it's like 11 seconds or 12 seconds, then it will dissipate if you don't cling into it.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing to think about it from a cellular level that way.
Sure.
And to help like detach from this physical experience that's happening in my physical body.
Yeah.
Because for me, like, my nervous system is very physical in my body, the way it reacts. Like, one of the things that I want to talk about that's a tool is learning to be vulnerable. But one of the things that it touches into as I'm about to go into my experience of learning to be vulnerable was really what happened in my nervous system when I first started experiencing vulnerability, which was hot all over my skin, hives. It'll still happen to me sometimes. It's like tightness in my throat. My brain doesn't work clearly. I don't really know what I'm saying. My heart's racing. I start sweating profusely, and that's the way my physical body responds when my nervous system is engaged. It's incredibly miserable. And so for me, like, touching into that just reminds me of like one of the tools that I've learned, which I guess is also it's an experience, but it's an awareness of how much learning to be vulnerable in safe situations and places has impacted
Oh yeah.
my experience. It's one of the greatest tools that I've learned because of the depth of connection that I develop with other people, the awareness that I have of other people's shared experience and who we are as humans, like the compassion and empathy that we can have for one another because our experiences are so similar.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is like a secret doorway to all of that.
Sure.
To me. And that was a huge tool that was the beginning of a huge change in my life.
Yeah. So when you're feeling like the call to be vulnerable now, how do you navigate situations where you don't feel like could be completely safe or you're not sure?
I don't be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because that was something I had to learn early on.
Yeah.
You know, I can also remember as like a teen girl, having a hard time navigating the difference. It was either like I'm completely like bound and I'm keeping everything within because I don't share, that's not safe.
Yeah.
And then I would have like a best friend, but I didn't have the awareness to know what was safe to share, and then I would just share everything.
Yeah.
And then there would be circumstances down the road where maybe something I shared was then shared with someone else.
Sure.
And that felt like, such a betrayal.
Yeah.
But really part of the awareness is understanding, the capacity of humans and
discernment.
reading,
like who's
safety.
Yeah. Who's capable, who's available, who can
It's like a sacred transaction
Sure.
that you slowly develop over time with certain souls.
Yeah.
And you're exchanging and you're building trust.
Yep.
And there's sort of a dance of that, but it's not, you do have to develop the skill of understanding.
Yeah, it feels like a bit of an equation, and as you say, it's kind of like the portal into something that's really beautiful that opens the door, but there's definitely several factors and ways it needs to all work together.
And I think that also just goes into attuning energetically with people.
Yeah, so it's funny because this conversation I was actually having last night in one of my meetings, and I think for many years, just having a history of being in relationships with addicts and alcoholics, everyone wants to know the drama.
Yeah. Give me the tea.
And when I started attending meetings, it was one of the core principles or values is maintaining anonymity for the alcoholic, which at first I don't really give a shit about,
Yeah, that's not
it
my
was
fault.
kind of my way of no, this is who he really is. This is what's really going on. Let me tell you all my dirt.
Yeah.
And what I remember experiencing is emptiness. I didn't feel like I could tell you the wildest stories about what happened to me and this, this crazy occurrence, but it never hit on the real core issue. It never is quelched a word when you put out a fire? It never quenched. I was gonna say quenched, but that's
the fire,
thirst.
stoked the fire.
No, but
stoke
when
is
you
to
kill
create.
a fire.
Yeah.
Of really the anxiety or the pain or the suffering, it didn't help me sleep better at night.
Yeah. You didn't feel relief.
Yeah, and I feel because it came from the intention behind it was much more of this passive aggressive.
Yeah.
And
everybody
dramatic, yeah. And
validate me
and I'm a victim.
Yeah.
Or even this is why I am the way I am, an excuse for my behavior or something like that.
Yeah.
So what I think what the shift there is, and this comes back to your level of awareness of self and looking at like your why behind what you're sharing and what you're looking to get from it or gain from it. And is that simply to connect, or is that like, I acknowledge this part of myself, or I acknowledge this dysfunction and I want to like shift it in some way?
I mean, I think awareness is the gateway.
Yeah.
Awareness is the gateway tool, right? So
Always.
I mean, I was just talking to my therapist about it today. Like, I have different cliques of friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I have an event coming up and I'm trying to decide who do I want to commingle? What do I have the energetics for? Like, what mood am I in? So
and who are you going to be?
And how do I feel in response to these different social energetics?
Yeah.
And one thing I'm recognizing, I haven't been using the word conscious in a while because I feel like conscious is overused, but it really is a great word other than aware. Awareness and consciousness. I really do feel like a lot of the people that I interact with in my life, I can put into one group. The people who are self-aware are working on self-awareness and learning and growing. And then I can put another group into the opposite, which is just, you know, living life and not aware of like why they're doing things or what's going on. Of course, none of us are aware of everything all the time.
Yeah.
And I have to be careful with that to make sure I'm not like hyper vigilant and aware.
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance for me, but like, I don't feel safe with, for the most part, in scenarios, like social scenarios with people who in an intimate setting aren't in that space.
I know, but do you feel like this is kind of your nervous system? I think it's like the owl brain or something, when you're like looking around for cues of safety, but what's happening is like that's your like fear-based like kind of anxiety, like do I have something to worry about? Like will I be judged?
Yeah.
What will they think of me? Because I feel, for me, I know that like there's always going to be the chance of like oversharing or being too much for someone, right? But I don't think you're ever doing yourself or anyone else a disservice by being too conscious or too aware. Like you just show up as who you are, and like if someone asks you how you're doing and they can't handle the response, like okay, then the conversation doesn't really go further.
But that's also what I was talking about with my therapist today, which is like the Kundalini now. Like, because that's what I was telling her. I'm like, yeah, I just want to walk into all these environments, invite like both of these groups of people and just like be who I am and be self-confident in all these ways and just like own it and claim it. And she's like, yeah, Kelly, Kundalini now. Like, that's obviously what we all want to be. We want to be like this healed Zen goddess that's not bothered by anything ever.
Yeah, and of course you're gonna have your toddler there.
Well, that's a trigger.
Who's
we'll
gonna
start
like
there.
Really bring out, you know.
Like, no, I can't even think. So, and then it's just But her message to me was like, have grace and compassion for yourself, and that is part of the journey of the awareness. If you notice that you're feeling this way with like this group of people, you're learning that why would you do this thing and put yourself in that scenario when you look at this other group of people and you don't feel near the stress or the anxiety of having that people over. That is you learning and evolving, because you need what she was telling me is like, look back at your childhood and the environments that you were in. And then she's like, I have this image of you like running up against a brick wall, and by surrounding yourselves in that like social circle and that group, like you're just recreating your like the negative childhood environment, which was where you had to like be hyper vigilant and try to find
don't
safety
be too much,
with your hyper
protect yourself.
keep quiet.
It matters what other people think of you.
Like, that is an interesting thought. Like, why, if you have tried with someone to share like where you're at and they've continually proven that they can't meet you where you're at or where you're wanting to go, why continue?
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
know.
I think you have to have grace and compassion for yourself. You also have to have grace and compassion for others.
Yeah.
And I think additionally, like, everyone is going through their own shit.
Yeah.
That quite often they don't have the time
Yeah.
or capacity to be thinking anything other than that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, just to be on the other side of like an invitation over here. It's like, oh, I'm going to Kelly's house. Okay, well, how am I feeling? Who's going to be there?
Yeah.
What is she going to think of me? That's what other people are experiencing. Not when I get to Kelly's house, I'm going to check that place out. And if she raises her voice to her toddler, I'm going to judge her. You know, like we're all
that's
in
gonna
our
happen.
own storyline.
Yeah.
We're all our own main character.
Yeah.
And I get that it takes a lot to be, you know, and I think that that's a survival tool and a good one. Like, we need to learn to discern who to share our hearts with and our vulnerability with 100%. But I still think it's the magic bullet, you know, for connection.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
just like, how can we give ourselves enough grace to be like, I show up messy and I show up imperfect, and I'm still worthy of being loved and liked by you.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and like what keeps us coming back to those people that like we don't connect with, I think is a big part of the ego and validation, external validation, and people pleasing. Because we, of course, want everyone to like us.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, you know, when people don't connect with me, like, you're missing out.
Yeah. For sure. So let's like summarize. What did we just come up with? Like, awareness in general, self-awareness, vulnerability.
Yeah.
For you, masculine, feminine, awareness, like balance within your own self. What was the other one?
The tools that bring us back to ourselves.
For me, it was like the awareness that I've like taken on anxiety as early on, that I felt like it was something that I needed.
Yeah, and like the survival skill, like loving those shadow parts up.
Oh, and perfectionism.
Yep.
Thinking that we had to have that to survive, and the awareness of why it exists.
Yep.
Was there anything else?
I think one thing for me that's something that I'm always working on is around, so we've talked about awareness, is around acceptance.
Surrender for me is the way I would word it.
Yeah. And we initially prefaced this topic talking about like, you know, tools that have shaped us and how it's affected like our health and our relationships and our family, but also experiences. And I think with me, and I'm sure you can relate, but like one of the biggest life experiences that I've had that have really shifted me, changed me, in a major way was my sister-in-law being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
And battling for 4 years and then passing last May. And I think that's when surrender and acceptance took on a whole new meaning for me.
Yeah.
And because she is a mother of my nieces, there was like, I mean, there's a lot with like the parent-child dynamic around acceptance too. But it was really hard for me to completely surrender and accept that she was going to die.
Yeah.
One of the big things was because she had very little acceptance around it.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
that caused me to go into a tailspin of why this is happening to her.
Yeah.
And it's a place that my mom lives. Like, that's where her reality is like, she has to know why. She has to have the reason why. And at some point, I feel like my relationship with and my trust in the divine became much more stronger in, I don't need to know the why.
Yeah.
But I can find acceptance around that this is happening and there's not a goddamn thing I can do about it.
Yeah.
And I was not taught to be that way. I was taught to fight. I was taught to identify the why. I was taught to try to use my will over others to change outcomes. Like,
well, this is another one that's like really beneficial in a work environment.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same for me. I feel like I have the same predisposition, and having a toddler was a major. I have in Sanskrit, I have this gold necklace that says surrender. And I have worn that and said it's because of my toddler. And I also have it on my forearms, on one, I think on my left arm, and is for when I'm like on my knees with my hands in prayer.
Yeah.
And you know that it's been surrender in everything. It's been surrender in business, in relationships, in motherhood, letting go of the control or the forcing of things.
Yeah.
I mean, and even just with the direction of my life.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. And the trust is surrender and trust. Like the trust that I'm going to be faced with the challenges. I have no idea what they are. They're going to come at me, and trusting that they're here for a reason, and it's going to propel me to the next level of growth. You know, and it was the same surrender process when my husband committed suicide out of nowhere for the most part. Like, it wasn't something that I knew he was contemplating, or really anyone except for his best friend did. And I had to there was nothing I could do. Yes, I went to that place too, where I said, could I have done? What should I have done?
Yep.
I went through that whole process. And, you know, every day, anytime I think about him, I'm surrendering to the fact that happened, and that's my reality, and there's nothing that I can do about it.
Yeah.
And that this life is over. And that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And trusting that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, in trusting something, a power that's much greater than us, you know, turning it over, surrendering it over to that, it helps build those self-trust muscles as well.
Yeah. And I think I've been blessed with enough really terrible scenarios that somehow turned into some sort of amazing scenario in no way that my little human brain could have foreseen. And that's been helpful for me, and trusting the process of it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think this exercise of reflecting on the tools that have shaped us.
Yeah. Which
brings us back to like acknowledge, like, damn, I went through that. Like I did that. I went through that experience, and this is what I learned for myself. And I think that's so important, because oftentimes we're largely basing our experiences off of our history, off of the past, right? Yeah. But for some reason, I feel like my mind just goes blank on, like, you know, sometimes the lessons I've learned, the things that I've gleaned, the strength that I've created within myself. It's like this muscle that I need to, like, remember I have.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're often just trying to, like, divert away from discomfort in our lives, but it's really it's really interesting. Again, it's like, yeah, I haven't done this perfectly, but damn, I sure as hell did that.
Like, fuck yeah, I love me. Thank you. Me, this was amazing. It's like that Snoop Dogg quote. Have you seen? Like,
Yeah.
I want to
wanna
thank me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes we need to give ourselves that self-love, you know? Like, I was going down my Abode Instagram, cleaning it up because I haven't really been posting on there. And, you know, the brand is changing and going through a refresh right now and like redefining and looking back over all of that. And I was like, damn.
Yeah. Look what I did.
I had some shit going on. Like,
Yeah.
whoa. I was so like, oh, perfectionist. Like, this isn't right and this isn't right. And oh my gosh, that photo and this, and like so detail oriented and lost in it. And looking back from afar now, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I was putting some shit out there. I can't believe I ever doubted myself.
Right.
At times, you know? Like, yeah, like I can do some really cool things.
Absolutely.
And it's like that comes in waves.
I know.
You know, like portfolio photos, or even like this house that I'm in right now, which is a project that I'm working on. And it's like, damn, I don't even know, like, what?
Yeah.
What happened in my life? Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Oh, that's me? Huh. Like,
yeah.
I have these moments sometimes where it's like, wow, I did that too. Oh yeah, and I did that too. Mm-hmm. Like, how much life has already happened?
Absolutely.
Because, like, what are memories? They're so...
I know.
They can be so distant.
Yeah.
You know? Like...
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like short-circuiting the fear, you know? Because, like, we have fear of the unknown. We have fear of the future. What's next? We don't know. Am I going to be good enough? And then I think, like, when we go back to and really look at a more in-depth way of not from our past of like, oh, this something bad happened to me, but like what I got from it. And like I think about just like even looking at pictures of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, when we always just like typically, oh, I hate that picture. You pick yourself apart, and then 10 years or even, you know, a year later, you're like, damn, I look pretty good.
Yeah, I was like, wow, what was I doing back then? Like, I should be doing that now.
That's pretty good.
Like,
that's pretty good.
Yeah. So this happens to me too.
Yeah. I think it happens to all of us.
Yeah. It's so funny, this journey as a human.
Yeah.
What surprised you? And that's kind of a broad question. I'm just looking at our notes here.
Yeah. Well, I think what comes up for me is, so
it all surprised me.
Yeah.
Everything we've talked about when it happens.
Yeah, I think, so for some reason the word capacity is coming up for me because I think it's something that I'm struggling with right now. And just feeling like at capacity and very like overstimulated and overworked, over lifed. Like there's just a lot.
Mommed.
And I feel, you know, like what I'm attuned to and learning more about is where that over capacity feeling comes from, and really choosing to tend to my nervous system through it. But I think what surprises me is my capacity, you know, it's like this reflection exercise of being like, damn, wow. Like I was a new mom and lived with an alcoholic and worked full time and lived in a fixer upper that I was fixing up. And, you know, I'm like, damn, that's crazy.
Like, yeah, that's amazing. You did so much. And Grace, of course, you're tired.
Yeah.
And what have you been doing for the last couple of years as like a single mom? And what challenges have you been faced with? And like, your capacity.
Yeah, and it's like okay for me to feel at capacity right now. And it
makes sense.
Yeah, and you have been so helpful in like validating that for me, because I still, you know, just go back to that perfectionist, like I should be this and I should be that. But Yeah, it is surprising to me feeling this way the way I do now, which feels like, oh, maybe I'm not doing as good enough job, or I haven't grown that much. It's like, oh no, like you're just, you're in a place right now where you are at capacity, and that's okay. And then you can recall these tools and understand and know and trust that on focusing on them, it gives you greater capacity.
I think that for me, I don't know that it would be considered part of the midlife crisis, whatever the fuck that is. But I do feel like when I'm in this place of judging how much I've done and whether it's enough, and not validating my capacity,
Yeah,
or what I have been through, been holding, achieved, whatever, I feel the pressure of like being 40 and...
which you're not.
But I'm basically...
You're not, though.
And, okay, where were my parents at this time in my life? In their lives?
Yeah.
Where should I... Comparing to, like, the boomers.
Yeah.
Where should I be? Have I done enough? Do I have enough money? Am I successful enough? Am I prepared enough for retirement?
Oh, it's exhausting.
And I'm also driving around lately, like, how much time am I spending in my child? Like, you remember what it was like when you're in high school and you see, like, an almost 40-year-old and you're like, damn, look at them. Like, they're so old and, like, they live this adult life. Like, do you feel like you're in that life? Like, inside of yourself in your experience?
So it's interesting lately because there's certain people that were in my life, and this is probably more that when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
That I think about, and a lot of them are like my parents' friends.
Yeah.
I mean, my friends' parents,
Yeah.
and like one in particular was a single mom, and I just always loved being around her, and she had just quite the way about her. And I find myself just thinking about her and her best friend, who is my other friend's mom. And I remember like recognizing, like, a perfect example. A lot of times when I would go over there, like later in the day, in the afternoon, they would be in bed, laying in bed, watching TV.
Oh, I get that.
After a long fucking day. And I've been thinking about that. I'm like, I fucking get it. And
validated.
And we would climb into bed with them.
Yeah.
And they would turn the TV down and we'd tell them all the gossip and all the drama, and they loved it. And that was like our ritual. And, so it's just like, and I don't know exactly how old they were at that time, if like I was younger, older, whatever. I mean, I was older, so they were probably a little bit older than I am, but it's extremely validating, and it feels like a little, like a little portal into like, like, I know how they must have been feeling.
This portal into what it looked like from that viewpoint growing up at this age bracket, and then looking at ourselves now.
Yeah, and also like, damn, life is exhausting.
Yeah. I just can't. Like, I could go on some riffs here about that. I mean, my negative comparison is like thinking about my mother, like staying up late at night, crunching numbers, doing the accounting for my parents' company while like us kids were in bed. My dad was, I don't know where he was, watching football or something.
Sure.
And because she was, a stay-at-home mom, but a working mom. So it was like this very mixed schedule. It's not like she worked the whole 9 to 5, which was actually, I guess, quite modern for that point in time.
Yeah.
But like, doing it all, like all the accounting records with pencil and graph paper, and like you have a chart of accounts, you have your check register, you have like all the general, like the journals. So that's like my self-critic coming up, like in the comparison of I
feel like I have that with my mom too.
Like, what was my mom doing at this age? And she
was definitely dating a lot more men than I was.
we can work on that. If
She
it's
was
something that you
engaged.
want.
She was like, yeah, she was living it up. And then, but I don't know. I think it's funny because one of the reasons I go, I think, to my friends' moms more than my mom is because being around them
interesting.
felt fun
Yeah.
and freeing.
Yeah.
It never felt that way being around my mom. I always was attuned to her anxiety and her worry.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, even when her career started to take off, it was just like, I was attuned to like not having enough money, or am I asking for too much? So, yeah, it's a tangled web. But I don't know.
Yeah, the only person that, if I quickly go there in my brain, that stands out is my kindergarten teacher. She was like the coolest.
Yeah.
Like this flowing blonde hair, you know, this is like the late 80s, I guess early 90s. She drove, I think it was, I don't know what it was. Was it a Mustang?
Yeah.
It was a Ford. The one that had the seat belt that went, you know, when you turn the car on, it came back and did it, and I thought that was so
Was
cool.
it a Ford Probe? My brother, or my dad bought one of those, and it had like 2 doors.
There's photos of me sitting in her car, like with my multicolored headband.
Yeah.
And like and she had a golden retriever dog. I don't even know if she was really married. Her name was Miss Shelton. Hi, Miss Shelton from Woodward Academy, if you're listening. Something about that woman deeply
Was she
impacted
single?
me.
Or was she married?
I think maybe she was single, but that is my sort of perception.
Interesting.
But she just seemed to be like living it up, you know?
Yeah, like enjoying life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be someone like that, who's enjoying life.
Yeah.
Like, you might not want my bank account or, you know, my problems, but I want you to feel good, leave feeling good when you're around me.
Yeah, I think I'll in this with that point, and that like the biggest tool that's changed me, and maybe you tell me, is that like the perspective that this is our life.
Yeah.
We really are here. Yes, we have things that we're healing. Yes, we have karma that we're moving through, and spiritual and karmic goals that we're moving towards. But we are also here in this fucking magical land, in this giant ass universe. Mm-hmm. And let's enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, not every day is guaranteed.
Don't forget, that's the whole point.
Yeah. It's magical.
To enjoy your experience, the experience of being human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just spiritual beings living the human experience.
I love that.